The shadow of Blackwood Manor. In the quiet town of Blackwood, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, stood an old, abandoned mansion known as Blackwood Manor. For decades, the mansion had been the subject of eerie rumors, whispers of ghostly apparitions, strange noises, and unexplained disappearances. But no one dared to venture inside, until one fateful night. The invitation. It all began with an anonymous letter delivered to 5 strangers. The letter was simple yet cryptic. You have been chosen. Midnight. Blackwood Manor. Come alone. The recipients: Emily, a journalist; Jack, a retired detective; Sarah, a historian; Mike, a thrill seeker; and Lisa, a psychologist, had no connection to each other. Yet, curiosity, or perhaps fate, drew them to the manor on a cold, moonless night. The gathering. As the clock struck midnight, the 5 strangers stood at the entrance of Blackwood Manor. The heavy oak doors creaked open on their own, revealing a dimly lit foyer filled with dust and decay. A single note lay on the floor. Welcome. The game begins. Find the truth, or join the shadows. Uneasy but intrigued, they stepped inside. The doors slammed shut behind them, and the real nightmare began. The first death. The group decided to stick together, exploring the mansion room by room. The air was thick with tension, and every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down their spines. In the library, they found a portrait of a man with piercing eyes and a sinister smile. Beneath it was a plaque: Elias Blackwood, 1872–1890. As they examined the portrait, the lights flickered. When they steadied, Mike was gone. Panic set in as they searched for him, only to find his lifeless body in the study, hanging from the chandelier. His face was frozen in terror, and on the desk lay another note. 1 down. 4 to go. The Unraveling. The remaining 4 realized they were trapped in a deadly game. They discovered journals and letters scattered throughout the mansion, revealing the dark history of Elias Blackwood. He was a wealthy recluse who had allegedly murdered his entire family before vanishing without a trace. The townsfolk believed his spirit still haunted the manor, seeking revenge on the living. As they delved deeper, the group began to turn on each other. Jack accused Emily of staging the whole thing for a story. Sarah suspected Lisa of having a hidden agenda. Trust eroded, and paranoia took hold. The second death. In the dining hall, they found a table set for 5, with 1 chair overturned. A note on the table read: "The past demands justice. Who will pay the price?" Suddenly, the chandelier above the table crashed down, narrowly missing them. In the chaos, Sarah screamed. She had been stabbed in the back with an antique dagger. Her last words were, "It's him. Elias." The truth revealed. With only 3 left, the group uncovered a hidden passage leading to a basement. There, they found a shrine dedicated to Elias Blackwood, complete with his remains and a journal detailing his crimes. But the final entry was the most chilling. "I am not the monster. They are. They betrayed me, and now they will pay." As they read the journal, the lights went out. When they came back on, Jack was gone. Emily and Lisa found him in the foyer, his throat slit. A note in his hand read, "2 remain. 1 will survive." The final confrontation. Emily and Lisa realized the only way out was to confront Elias's spirit. They performed a ritual described in the journal, hoping to put his soul to rest. As they chanted, the air grew colder, and a shadowy figure emerged: Elias Blackwood. He revealed the truth. The 5 strangers were descendants of the people who had betrayed him over a century ago. He had lured them to the manor to exact his revenge. In a desperate struggle, Lisa sacrificed herself to destroy Elias's spirit, allowing Emily to escape. As she fled the manor, it burst into flames, consuming everything inside. The aftermath. Emily returned to town, forever changed by the horrors she had witnessed. The authorities dismissed her story as a delusion, but she knew the truth. Blackwood Manor was gone, but the shadow of Elias Blackwood lingered in her mind. Years later, Emily received another letter. The game is not over. Midnight. The new manor. Come alone. In the quiet town of Willowbrook, a series of chilling murders left the residents in fear. The victims were all found in their homes, with no signs of forced entry or struggle. The only clue was a single black feather left near each body. The first victim was Emily Carter, a retired librarian. She was found in her living room, her face frozen in terror. The police found no fingerprints or DNA, only the feather. A week later, Mark Thompson, a local mechanic, was found dead in his garage under similar circumstances. The town was on edge. Detective Sarah Collins took charge of the case. She noticed that both victims had recently visited the old, abandoned mansion on the edge of town. The mansion, once owned by the wealthy Blackwood family, had been empty for decades after a fire killed the entire family, except for their youngest son, Ethan, who disappeared. Sarah decided to investigate the mansion. As she explored the dusty, decaying rooms, she felt an eerie presence. In the attic, she found a hidden diary belonging to Ethan. The entries spoke of abuse and neglect, and a final entry read, "They will pay for what they did to me." That night, Sarah received a call. Another victim, Laura Bennett, had been found dead. This time, the feather was placed in her hand. Sarah rushed to the scene and noticed a faint symbol carved into the victim's wrist, a symbol matching one she'd seen in the diary. Sarah returned to the mansion, convinced Ethan was alive and seeking revenge. In the attic, she found a hidden room filled with photos of the victims and a map of the town with marked locations. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. A voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." In the darkness, Sarah saw a shadowy figure holding a knife. She fought back, managing to escape, but the figure vanished. The next day, the mansion burned to the ground, leaving no trace of Ethan. The murders stopped, but Sarah knew the truth. Ethan was still out there, waiting for his next opportunity. The town of Willowbrook would never feel safe again. The Silent Witness. In the small coastal town of Seabrook, life was peaceful, until the day the body of a young woman was found on the beach. Her name was Clara Bennett, a 24-year-old artist known for her vibrant paintings and reclusive nature. The town was shaken, and the police were baffled. There were no signs of struggle, no weapon, and no witnesses. The only clue was a small, blood-stained seashell clutched in Clara's hand. The investigation begins. Detective James Carter, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind and a troubled past, was assigned to the case. He quickly realized this was no ordinary murder. Clara's studio, a quaint cottage by the sea, was filled with half-finished paintings, each depicting eerie, shadowy figures. One painting, in particular, caught his attention, a dark, faceless man standing on the beach under a blood-red moon. James interviewed Clara's friends and family. Her best friend, Rachel, revealed that Clara had been acting strangely in the weeks leading up to her death. She had mentioned feeling watched and receiving anonymous letters. Rachel handed James one of the letters. "Your art speaks the truth. But the truth will silence you." The first breakthrough. James discovered that Clara had been researching the town's history, specifically a series of unsolved murders that had occurred 30 years earlier. The victims were all young women, and each had been found with a seashell in their hand. The killer was never caught, and the case went cold. James dug deeper into the old case files. He found a connection. All the victims had been artists or writers, and their deaths coincided with the annual Seabrook Art Festival. Clara's murder had occurred just days before this year's festival. The suspects. James narrowed down the suspects. Edward Harris, a wealthy art collector who had been pressuring Clara to sell her work. Martha Lane, a rival artist who had publicly feuded with Clara. Thomas Reed, a reclusive fisherman who lived near Clara's studio and had a criminal record. James interviewed each suspect, but none had a solid alibi for the night of the murder. Edward claimed he was at a gallery opening, but witnesses were unsure. Martha said she was home alone, and Thomas refused to speak at all.